Welcome to Design and Dialogue. Hello, Jongerius. So nice to see you today.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hello, everyone.
And you are calling in from Berlin. Please, out there in the audience, let us know where you are calling in from. And also, as Lucy said, if you have questions as we talk, just put them in the chat box. We'll get back to them towards the end. Hella, we're going to get right to it because we have so much to talk about. And this is a little bit of an unusual interview because due to the scope of your work, and there's so much that we could have talked about, we decided to focus in just on one theme. And that theme is finding freedom within the context of industrial design, or as you put it to me very beautifully, finding some oxygen in the often restrictive domain of industrial design. So I wonder if you could say a little bit about that idea first before we start turning to specific examples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think industrial design is a beautiful way of expressing or making or designing objects, but I think it is very important that that the objects are not standardized because we are not working for people that are standards. You know, you have so many individuals. I like to design objects that push a bit on the boundaries of the industrial design. And yeah, that's always a search. Where is a gap and where is some space to change something in the process or in the system that industry works. It is always looking for, and also I think each time when there is a boundary in industry, I look at it as a creative moment. So, okay, there is a stop, then I go around on the left to see, is there some space? Where can I find my, unfinished, the uncontrollable, the misfits, the irregularity, the asymmetric? So this is where I'm searching for. To get some humanism in the industrial products.
Yeah, I was just going to use that same word, humanism or human values in the context of industry. So some of it is about individuality, maybe. Would that be an important word to use?
Yeah.
And I guess I wonder, what are the restrictions that you're actually pushing against? In other words, what is it that prevents that individualism from coming forward? Obviously, industry is usually serial production, so it's mass quantities as opposed to individual. That's clear. But what are the other impediments?
I think money. So it all has to have a certain price. So that's a main, very big boundary or scope where you have to work within. Because industries always look at what the other industries are doing, so you can't have a totally high price. Nobody will buy it. So this is a boundary. And testing is a very important one. So there is a lot of industrial testing, like for textiles, UV light, fire retardants, rubbing, and with all this testing in mind, also for furniture and everything, the way you use your material or the process of making the production, you can only use a small part of the cake that would be possible if we place our, or if we have our boundaries, or if we have our testing results lower. So I think the testing is really against quality. I find that very much. So it is in testing on functionality, but not on comfort or on quality or on a softer way of looking at products. Like tactility is not tested. All kinds of textures or colors. It's all from a very functional and also to keep things safe, you know, as if safety is our quality. So that's something I also try to push against. Like, how can we get into a more human way of testing for industry. That's an important topic. Yeah.
That's so interesting that you can't test for aesthetics. So as a result, the pressure all goes in another direction. That's a fascinating insight.
Because aesthetic is a personal thing, and you only test what you can measure, what you fact, Yeah, so
sure.
That's yeah.
Let me ask you another question just about something you said when you were talking about money, which is that you made it sound like the companies are always looking over their shoulder at their competitors. And I wonder about that too, because if you're looking for individuality in what you're making, then maybe the company, your client, wants a little bit of individuality. So it doesn't look exactly like the competitor's product, but they don't want too much because they don't want to go out into too risky of a territory. So how does that dynamic work, and how do you navigate it?
It's very difficult. Oh, that's a very difficult topic. If the company thinks it is a very small group, then you rather do it also not industrial. Some products have so much signature, you rather do it in 10 or in 100 instead of thousands. So some products are not ready or don't have the character to make it industrial, because it is also for a very small market. So you have to get out of the industry. So if you work with industry, you always have to think of a larger group to appeal, not only me, myself, and my little crowd that is a fan of my work. So yeah. It is something with intuition and with marketing studies. What I also think, oh my God, marketing studies. So it's a vague, vague area too. But on a certain moment, you know what sells. Yeah, I know what sells. And I know I'm also somebody, people know I make love and hate pieces. So the pieces that I make, people love or hate. So I have not a handwriting that is average or is a modernistic, simplistic handwriting. It is an outspoken handwriting. So, and if they know people hate it, that's also a market that could become lovers. So it is a balancing act.
There's a kind of extremism, so you're avoiding that safe middle ground, not only not worrying so much about safety, like the testing part of it, but also not worrying about aesthetic safety and really going to the extremes.
I think we have enough safety.
Yeah. Let me ask you one last question before we look at images, and it's about the internal cultures of the companies that you work with, because you were just talking very interestingly about the broader context in which the producer sits, but then you also must have a lot of internal complexity, and we'll be looking at different firms. On one end of the extreme, KLM, the airline, which is a huge operation, and then you might have a small ceramics company. But surely any client has some internal division, some internal shape that you have to navigate. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, how you can exploit that or just find your way through it.
Yeah, if you have a cultural client, so people that are on the other side of the table that know the context of design and of what is happening in the world of design, what the aesthetics are, what everybody's heading for, or where we are in the parameters, it's easier to talk about design, and it's easier to persuade them into a new era. Or so it's on a more on eye level. If I talk to KLM, for instance, there is no design information, or they don't have a design mind. You can only talk about functionality. So everything you come up with needs to have a functional fact that makes something better. So that's another way of talking. So you have to, really, it is an important skill to have, a social skill, to know who's on the opposite of the table, and also wrap your things or frame it in one or the other way. So it's important. It's also important if a company has a lot of a huge archive already, a cultural archive, or a company that's just starting. You also have to think differently. You have to help them first to design a basic archive for them before you can start really diving into a deeper ground of interesting work, or dive into their machinery. What do they have as machinery or as production facilities is maybe more important if you have a smaller company. So these are a bit strings that you can pull on.
Well, that's actually a great segue to the first examples that we have. So maybe Hella, I can go ahead and start the images.
Sure.
And we're going to, in fact, begin with ceramics, which is a very well-known aspect of your work. But starting with an example that people might not know so well, which is going back a long time now, it's more than 20 years, I'm afraid to say, to the B set from 1997. This brings us back to a moment when Dutch design was very much influenced by Droog, or Droog, as we sometimes say in America. And in fact, we had Rennie Ramakers on the program earlier explaining that whole project. But I wonder if you could just start us off with B-Set and talk about how you began getting into this idea of introducing individuality to the industrial context.
Yeah, that story started looking in the cupboards of my friends and my own cupboard, that I never saw this very beautiful, perfect surface somewhere. It was all mix and match from markets and B cups and saucers, and nothing was matching. So I created this tea set, or this dinner set, with plates and cover and cups and everything. And that was in the kiln. The kiln, I placed the temperature too high, so everything was a little bit out of shape. So you see the kiln, or the higher temperatures, designed in a way an individuality within a serial production system, because the molds were all the same, but the outcome was all different.
As we see here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, you were using material and actually industrial process and almost a loss of control as a way of, so that's an interesting place to start, because it seems like you're almost embracing the opposite of what you were talking about before, testing, exactness, precision. And what you're trying to do is almost break the system, but in a very carefully controlled way. Would that be a good way of describing it?
Yeah, it's a good way to describe. When I did it at that time, the word imperfection was really, there was like, how could you think of making things imperfect? Especially in the ceramic industry, it was so, they could make it so perfect. Also the drawings and everything, the painting on top of it. So for them, an imperfection was in the society, it was not a topic. And craftsmanship was also still not really a topic that people were talking about. So I could only do this because I did it as a self-initiated project, and finding this very small company in Holland who wanted to take it in production, and Droog Design who wanted to show it into the world. So it was very, luckily it all came together at this, in this Zeitgeist, to say something in German.
Yeah. Can I ask, was there also a sense, as we move on to another ceramic project, I'm very struck by the fact that a lot of ceramic projects or producers waste a lot, and they throw out an amazing amount of material. 30%, 40% of their output may end up as waste. And I wonder whether you were also, even at this early time, interested in a kind of ecology or sustainability and embracing imperfection, or did that come later?
I think that came later. That was at that moment also not in the air. It's stupid to say because we are polluting the earth longer than the last 10 years, but at that certain moment, it was not a topic, no.
Okay. So it was really finding about an expressive possibility within the
Yeah,
production scenario, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So here we see something that I think people will have seen before, especially the red-white phase, which is really an early icon of your career, at least to me. Can you talk about how you came to this project and how it developed from the B set?
Yeah, it all developed all together. I wanted to make, urns that could have been done before, and it is based on an archive that I saw in a museum in Den Bosch. And I created these urns and showed the themes. That was also something that, that you have hand details or pottery or craftsmanship within this industrial making. And the glaze, the red glaze was auto car spray. So because I didn't want to use this because you couldn't use this red because it's toxic. So as a glaze you couldn't use it, and I want to have this pure red. You couldn't use it as a glaze, so I thought, well, then I go to the car and I buy a spray and I spray the thing. So it was a match of coming from another culture, this low culture, or another culture based on this very high brow material as porcelain. So to match these two worlds was something that I liked. And I did in the same time these bottles with tape. I connect them with tape, glass and ceramic. It was in the same way of being not so precise or holy porcelain, to dive into this this rigidity around this material, just play around. That was the idea.
Yeah, it seems very powerful to me the way that the red color and the white play against one another as if they're speaking from those two cultures, like the kind of clash that you're staging.
Yeah.
But also, I know this is not a talk about color, which is a whole other vast subject in your work, but we will get in a moment to some textiles that include a sort of image that's derived from this vase form. And the range of color that you eventually went on to explore in ceramics was obviously enormous. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how color served your purposes in this context. In other words, how color itself introduces an element of that expressive humanism that you were mentioning earlier. Like, is color something that happens for free in a different way, maybe?
For me, color is a material. So color is a study in itself. And in glazing, because I also did glazing with oxidized, so not chemical glazes, but with oxidized minerals. And I don't know how to answer this question because it's so broad.
Well, I guess maybe let me ask it this way. The color that you choose often doesn't have a huge implication for price, for example. So it seems to me from an outside point of view, like it might be one of the variables within design that you actually can lay hold of and use artistically or expressively more easily because it doesn't have as many of those testing qualities applied to it.
Yeah, that's something that's maybe you think that, but a customer or an industry doesn't want to have a lot of variations. It's too expensive to have many variations. So you always have to have, if you have a collection of textiles or you have a collection of chairs or whatever, or vases, let's say 7 is a lot, 7 different colors in one collection. That's a lot. So it's mostly 5. And then you always end up with a dark, a red, a green, a gray, a brown. And, there's not that much. It's because there is always a group that wants white or black. and then you have only 3 colors left or 7 colors left. So it's not, it's that's also a commercial boundary that you can't say like, oh, I do this very strange green, because nobody will buy this very strange green. You know, they have, the customers are also
so there's
conservative, to be honest.
So there's a kind of tyranny of the commercial, even in the domain of color, which should be so free. That's fascinating. We have this great image. I love this picture of the team that were involved in making the ceramics. Can you say a little bit about what they thought about what you were doing?
For them it was like very strange to make things that are not perfect, because it's all very skilled craftspeople, and but you know, it's also pragmatic. You know, if it sells, they saw it was selling, so they also know, oh, okay, you know, there must be a truth, so let's go for, because it's important that this company stays alive. It's the oldest company in Holland. It's more than 800 years old, so it's a very old company. So of course it was strange for them, but they're also happy, and also you see it. You know, I love the picture also. I really love the picture, and also to tell something about, you know, it's not just a designer, it's so much more before you have a product. And also the people in the factories, their hands are also in the product. So also if you think of sewing, upholstery, you know, that's all done by somebody by hand behind a sewing machine. It's you know, you talk about industry production, but so many things are still done by hand, although, you know, it is called industrial design. This is also in that time, like making experiments, and I don't know, it's a bleeding face. I don't know, it's funny.
Well, I was also thinking of your idea of sewing, though, as the individual type, because this feels very much like embroidery in a way.
Yeah, I also embroidered vases. I embroidered plates on tablecloth. Yeah, that was interesting. That was really interesting.
Well, let's move to a collaboration with a different ceramic producer, which is Nymphenburg. And this brings us more into the domain of what I would call surface decoration and imagery, I suppose, rather than the substance of the work. And here again, you were working with a producer with an absolutely enormous archive, and definitely exploiting that. So can you talk about the strategy that you used with them?
Yeah, so they asked me to make a new design for the plates, a new pattern. And then I went and visited the factory in Munich, very beautiful old historical place with all cupboards and a huge, huge archive. And I saw the testing studio where the painters were testing their colors and their images. And I thought, this is so much nicer than coming just with a new whatever picture. Just I wanted to show what the testing plates, and also their rich archive. So I built a matrix for them, a matrix what they can choose out of their archive. So the animals, they could choose a group of colors, they can choose little details of flowers. It was and then they can make their own testing plates. And each plate is different, and it all came out of their archive. So I think it was, and you really celebrate the crafts, you know, because they did it so perfect. So this is a template, where they had to place their flower or their piece of animal or their little details. And here you also see the craftsmanship, the hands, and you know, the other items that they look like just a transfer, because we don't recognize anymore hand painting or transfer, the sticker. So this is one of the examples that they make. So for me, they were also all new. You know, each one is a new one and looks different. And Yeah, and they enjoyed it so much. In the beginning, they didn't like it because they thought, oh, people will laugh, you know, people will laugh about how stupid I am trying. But then the director went down to the studio and told the people over there, listen, this is a brilliant idea, we love it, da, 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 da. And then they really dive into it. And it was, yeah, it's still in the collection. And I think, yeah, I don't know how many different they have been they have made since the past years, but yeah, I still love them very much.
You know, I love them too so much. And one question that occurs to me is whether the affirmation or positivity that you were able to give the painters was, in a way, the best thing that came out of the project, because you said earlier that you were after humanism in the work. And here, of course, you have actual humans that you're working with, and you're in a way giving them permission or a context in which to express themselves or use their own ideas and have actually enjoyed that individuality over the course of the day.
Yeah, the question is?
Well, I guess maybe let me turn it into a question. It seems to me that that strategy now feels very relevant in a way that maybe it didn't at that time. And I wonder whether part of your motivation here was not just to create individuality in the product, sorry, but actually there was almost what I would call a political motivation, like small p political, of trying to give workers a different kind of life, at least for the period of time that you were working with them.
I don't know. I find that a bit as if they don't do, if they didn't enjoy their work because they enjoy their work. This I know these people enjoy their work. The freedom that I gave them was they felt very insecure.
Okay.
So I don't know if I help them, or is that a nice idea that you think you can help craft people, because yeah, I don't know. I find it, you
Huh.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
it, because that almost implies a kind of arrogance on the
I,
part of the designer.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there are some that liked it. There was a young girl, she loved it, and others like give me just my normal job. I'm more happy with my normal painting job. Yeah,
Okay. I guess like anything else, people react to it in a different way, right? And
sure. Yeah,
that's the human thing.
yeah,
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 yeah. Okay. Well, let's shift to a different medium now, which is furniture. And we're
yeah.
going to talk about the Polder Sofa, again, a very well-known project of yours.
Yeah.
Maybe first, for those of us who have not been to the Netherlands, what are the polders and what's the reference of the title?
What a polder is?
Yeah.
That's a very flat landscape in Holland, where we have made shift our land in grids. So it is a very graphic way of dividing the land in Holland. So all the polders are made from water. So it was all under the sea level, and it's all new land that we gained from the water, and it is all very squared and in a grid.
Right. So a human-made landscape and very flat. And so one of the intentions of the sofa is to, in a way, evoke that landscape or remind one of that landscape. Yeah. Now, can you say a little bit about the qualities of individuality that you introduced to this project? So what's the shift from the normal way of doing upholstered furniture here?
Yeah. So this is already the second generation of the Polder Sofa. So this is the one we did with Vitra, I think 3 years ago. The first, the original one looked a bit different, but it doesn't matter. So my idea was to come with an asymmetric sofa, because the sofas all look always in one block of foam. A sofa is very difficult because it is a huge thing in your house, and you want a bit of expression, but you don't want to have like a Mickey Mouse, you know. You don't want to have this thing what is shouting in the corner because it's so big, and you want to have it for a long time because it's expensive. So but I wanted to give it a signature, and also try to solve the problem, like come with a service to the customers. Because if you know what kind of sofa you want, and you go to the shop, and then this guy comes in or the woman comes in and she has this huge roll, all these samples of fabrics, nobody knows what to choose. What fabric? Wool, cotton, what kind of color did I have on my floor, or on my wall, or what's the color of this other chair that I have? It's such a difficult question. So that's why I thought I give the sofa a few colors and also different fabrics. So it's always a wool, there's always a cotton, there's always a blend, and in different color shades. You have a color group of the reds, of the blues, of the greens, and this is the sofa. So and that's the this is the start. So this is the way I wanted to come with expression, and also to come with a rich textile collection for one item.
Okay, so there's in a funny way, there's a similarity here between what you're doing with upholstery fabrics and what you were doing with Nymphenburg, and that there's this kind of system in which you can mix and match freely. So it's like constrained variation, or constrained
customization.
Yeah, exactly. What were the implications for the project, just in terms of the production of the sofa? Because if you were limiting the textile range in that way, was that advantageous to the manufacturer?
Yeah, at the start, they thought nobody will buy this, because how to sell it in a shop. Do you need to have this 5 colors of fabric, or is it one collage of a thing? They didn't know how to sell it. So that's always also logistics. It's also in textile, when I did this repeat with this 3-meter repeat, how to sell things. It's also a step that you don't think of if you're a designer, but I know now. But to also think in logistics how to sell it. So that was a constraint, but they overcome, because it was immediately a success. The buttons was also not difficult. At the start, we thought, where can we find so many different buttons? But it was very easy. We made also a system for the buttons. So no, it was not so difficult. It was more like hesitation, like, do people want this? Do people want it? Yeah, but it was immediately a success. And after, I think it's now the longest sofa in the collection. And 2 years ago, it got the stamp a classic item in the collection of Vitra. That's why we made this new version. So the blue one you saw was the newest version. Here you still see a rim in front of it, upholstered rim. But we took out of that part. So yeah.
I'm really glad that you made that point about the retail landing spot of the design, because I think, and maybe we've even been guilty of this on Design and Dialogue, because we tend to focus on the moment of invention, creativity, the production perhaps. But of course, design has this much longer arc that not only goes to retail, but also then, as you said, people's houses. How big is this thing? What else is going to be near it? And as a designer, you need to think about every stage of that actively.
Also, how do you get this thing in your house? Because, it's also difficult if you want to have such a long thing, and how to clean it. Very important. If you have upholstery, you have to think for a longer lifespan than just this sofa, just this idea. And this is also in the industrial realm a very important topic.
Can I ask you maybe a little bit of a ridiculous question about that? Because that implies a kind of functionalism. And one of the ways that I might, like, if somebody had never seen your work before, Hella, one way that I might try to describe it is that it's trying to keep some of the great things about modernism, but bring them into the 21st century in a way that is much more human, has more emotional and kind of expressive quality to it. Do you still feel that indebtedness or connection to modernism and to the kind of rationalist generation of the 1930s, 40s, 50s?
Let's start to say that it feels like a compliment, very nice compliment. Yeah, modernism. Yeah, I come also, of course, from this tradition. I work with companies that has a very strong relation with modernism, and I find it too strict and try to push it and yeah, come indeed also have come with also with functionality that is beyond the function. So just the function of aesthetics. And I find that very important, that you have quality in aesthetics or in materials, that the materials are much richer and not that very pureness, this simplicity. I find it too rational, you know, I find it too rational. Yeah.
So it's again that finding freedom. I love this picture, by the way. Talk about thinking about things differently, turning it sideways. But it's
I didn't have space in the studio, so I said, "Come on, we never have time to sit in it." So
it is a sofa that is trying to remind us of the landscape. So the fact that it's very long is not surprising. But that is interesting because it makes me think that there's also almost like trying to find freedom within design history. So not staying within this restrictive compass of modernism, but trying to find new space within design history as well. We just have a couple of images while we're talking about textiles. We have a couple of images of this textile that's based on your ceramic vases. So this is just a quick interlude in a way. But just it gives you a sense of that color range too.
Yeah, this topic is also more about because I base a lot of my ideas. I never start with an empty sheet of paper. It's always based on an archive.
Yeah.
Because I think it's arrogant to think to come with something totally new. You're always standing on the shoulders of somebody or on the shoulders of, there is an archive of a company, of a culture, or of a production system, of a craft. So I always dive into the archive and build upon, and this is building upon my own archive. So I use the vase as a canvas to build upon other, ideas that I have and other projects. So the vase is with me for a long time. It's my archive and my tool to come into and make new products use it as a tool.
I think a lot of artists say that, don't they? That they try never to start with a blank canvas. You always go from one project to the next, so you're not starting from that emptiness. You're something to react to. Yeah. Let's turn now to KLM. This is a big topic. So this is, at least as far as I know, maybe your most ambitious corporate project in the sense of a huge company, lot of money, very big imprint on the world. And the project was really to, as I understand it, to remodel their business class cabins in their planes. So how did that come about? How did they come to you?
There was a lady from KLM. She just came by and visited the studio, and she said, "I have a job. Could you do the upholstery of the seats for business class?"
That's it.
And I said, "Yeah, of course, I'm interested. But who's doing your seats?" And then she said, "Well, we just buy them." I said, "We just buy them, you know." So that's a normal way how aviation or how airlines. So they buy ready-made seats, and they customize them for their own brand. So I said, well, I would like to look at the seat also. And so the first series, I couldn't do that much on the seats, a bit of colors, but I couldn't design the seat. But we did for long, now we did now we're doing the 4th generation. So we did business class 747, and now we did 787, and also from rear to tail, so also economy. So we are in the 3rd generation of chairs. So each chair I can add a little bit more and do and really come with other, real design the chair. So, but we did the whole interior, also the carpet. So here you see the spinning of the carpet. Because we designed our own yarns for the carpet, because that's an upscaling or an recycling yarn from the stewardess. They all received a new uniform in the 2 years before I came. So they had an enormous mountain of stewardess uniforms, and I said, well, can I use this? So we spun new yarns out of the dresses, and this was used in the carpet. So that's the first cradle to cradle carpet in aviation. I think that's, it was really wonderful that we could work that way, and it's still in all the planes from rear to tail. And then here you see a small maquette, because I also thought, you also have to work hands-on, although it is a product that is so high tech and so far away from a human. It's so in an industrial production, robotic. I don't know how small the path is. I first want to have it in my hands and play around what's possible. Here you see a little cabin in my studio with the curtains behind, the pleating of the curtains, because I wanted to have, between the 2 sections, economy and business class, I wanted to have not a curtain, but a bead curtain, so that you can look through who's in the other side, and that was not so rigid closed, but that was not possible at all, and that's why it has now these dots. So the right one with brown, that's the one that is chosen. So on what it has a double face. So on the one hand, you see on the business class, you see the brown, and the back side is the one next to it. So the back side is blue. So from the economy part, you see that part, that color range. And then you see on the flooring, you see the the cradle to cradle carpet, and you see the pillows and everything. So, and the covers of the seats, what we did is to work with 100% wool. That was also something what was new, and also I think quality wise, that's what you want. You want to not sit in these sweaty chairs for all night long, and each seat has another color. So I introduced 5 colors, shades, dark colors, and that was also built upon an archive. Rietveld, architect Rietveld, did this before for KLM in the 70s. He just gave them one drawing that was orange and yellow, and it was very, very vivid. So they never used this drawing, but I saw the drawing and I thought, oh, this is a wonderful idea. And later on, I was in Santa Fe last year, and I saw Girard also did something for an aeroplane, for an aeroplane company, also with these different colors on the upholstery. So I thought, it is in our collective memory. I really didn't know, but now that I used it, I think, it was a very nice idea. And also, you sit in this tube, so it's very narrow. If you have like small colors everywhere, it opens up. You have this sprinkle of colors. It gives you also humanity and also your personal individual seat. So that was the idea, and using real leather and and it's still, of course, a normal aeroplane or the business class. So it's not like you're sitting in your home, what you would like to fly with your home. But anyways, this is here, you see the 5 different colors. That was also very difficult for them to understand, because if you have 5 colors, you have to have spare fabrics in each airport, because if there is a stain, especially in business class, if there is a stain during a flight, somebody spilling wine, then you need to have this particular color somewhere to reupholster. So it was a very big step to have 5 colors, spare colors in each airport. So that these are logistics that is very rigid in the aviation. Here you see the bead curtain between business and economy. Yeah, you know, it's a very interesting world to work in. So I always start so free, you know, they look like me, like, oh my God, what do you want? But in the end, we delivered, you know, industrial, functional business class and economy. So.
I love this image, Hella, because it suggests that idea of the dreaming of what could be when you're up in the air and it could be anything.
Yeah.
But to me, it seems like in a funny way, what made this really successful was your ability to understand all of the incredible restrictions that were being placed on you, which must have been absolutely endless. You know, the number of factors that you had to bear.
Oh, it was like, and also the language. I couldn't understand all the coding and all. It was like, but it was also very, very interesting. And also, I also knew, like, I first make my small steps. I gave them an imaginary. I gave them a world that could happen, and I make my small steps and build upon our relation. And I'm still in working with them. They're happy with me because I understand it. I can make my small steps, making sometimes push a bit. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting, an interesting collaboration. Although, you know, aviation with my idealistic agenda, you know, you wouldn't think of. I would be interested to work for aviation, but it's our real world. Nowadays, we are shifting, of course, in paradigm because we are in another world. We don't fly anymore. But in a year ago, we still is our life, you know. And why don't I add some comfort to this dirty realism?
And some subtle nuance to people's experience, even if they don't consciously realize it, how many people you're affecting there. It's quite extraordinary to think about that. That is the power of design right there, you know, something that an artist almost can't aspire to, that kind of pervasive, you know, below the radar influence, perhaps. But having said that, we're now going to pivot to something that to me feels a lot like an artwork, this project Interlace, which the way I understand it is sort of like weaving in 3 dimensions. Is that a good way of describing it? Because it can be quite hard to understand in pictures. So we do have a few images, and then we'll finish with a video of this. So can you say a little bit about how this grew out of your other involvement in textiles?
Yeah, so I have been working for a company in New York, Meharem, for many years, for 20 years. So I do upholstery. I do 3 upholsteries a year. So I am very much schooled in this industrial way of working with textile. And 2-3 years ago, I thought I want to open up the scope because there's so much possible in textile. So I wanted to research for myself. I bought a digital loom. I started to weave, and because I also had the show going on, and start to dive into 3D weaving. We built a seamless loom, a big loom, made out of 4 looms. We hacked those looms and built. Here you see me with bricks. Anyway, there was so much. But 3D weaving is something that has a future. It is the lightest construct, a woven structure, and the strongest, lightest and strongest structure. That's why I think it has, and many with me this is the seamless loom, have a future. So I think that's the future for textiles, to have a technical 3D woven structures that you can customize, because you start with choosing your yarns, then choosing weaving, knitting, looping, and then, you know, you can have antibacterial weaves, you can have UV resistant weaves, you can have big blocks of isolated structures, or use it in beton. So it has really, in the car industries already working, of course, with carbon and everything. So, but this 3D weaving, this building on this structure, that's something that interests me. And this is a very artistic approach. But I'm now also in this more technical part of textiles, and working with some universities and loom builders who are doing this sandwich 3D weaving. Yeah, this is a very artistic piece. This is very happy that it didn't come to Berlin because it's so big. That Pompidou, Centre Pompidou has bought this piece. So I'm very lucky and happy that it is in a very good collection.
Yeah. It is like installation art, but it also makes me think of some of the great fiber artists like Sheila Hicks, who actually lives in Paris, for example.
Yeah, I know.
Sort of touches on that legacy as well. But fundamentally, it's an exploration of structure and the possibilities of this technique. And again, both expressive and functional.
Yeah. And we designed the yards ourselves. So each warp was designed, and so it was a huge research. Yeah.
You know, one thing that I love about it, just on our theme, because this, of course, is not an industrial project per se, but there's something about the way that the fibers come free at the end that really, to me, communicates everything that we have been talking about, this kind of release from constraint. So it seems like a more poetic exploration of that same idea, that same goal.
Yes, and also there is a part where we are bound, we are bound,
Yeah.
we are connected, we are interwoven, and a part we are free spirits. It's free yarn, everybody, free warp, and I like that idea too.
Yeah, that's interesting too, isn't it? Because we've been talking about the search for freedom and the search for oxygen, but obviously you've chosen to do that specifically in contexts that are very restrictive. Because I suppose at a certain point you could have just gone off and become a fine artist, but there must be something about the friction of those production situations that you actually like. You like trying to find the space in a very tight box, maybe.
Yeah, and also I think the industry, if you work for such a larger group of audience, and you have I have a social, I feel that I have a bigger impact, so I can change something within a system that I don't believe in. So it is also, the impact that you can have, and my moral, I have a moral compass, and that's what I use in my response. I want to be part of a solution, and with industry, you have a bigger voice. That's I think a bigger voice than as an artist, in my point of view.
Yeah. Well, let's finish with this last project, the Flinders Sofa. It's quite recent now. And I wonder if you could talk about this, perhaps also saying a little bit about where you're at as a designer now too, everything that you've learned along the way and how you're applying it to a specific project like this one. Because to me, it seems like it breathes the sophistication and the experience that you've accumulated through all of these different adventures.
Yeah, this Flinders Sofa, it took, like, I was asked by Vitra to make a new sofa. I think 10 years ago I started. And each time I thought, oh my God, a new sofa, why? We have sofas enough, and what can I add? And I built a few prototypes, and I never saw a reason to take it in production. Also, Vitra was not interested, so it was not just me. And then on a certain moment, I thought the only thing that is interesting is the skin of the product, and I can make a new expression, or I can push boundaries within the industrial weaving, because that's the testing, and the constructs are always very simple, just one up, one down basket weaving. Don't come with very difficult constructions and different yarns types. And so we did this kind of very high tech, although you don't see it, but it is very difficult to weave this all together in one piece. And I just concentrated on push the boundaries of this industrial weaving and come with a cover that has an expression, and that makes the sofa. That's in a way the design. So the newness is only the skin, and and a development in knowledge. It is in a way knowledge for the factory, knowledge for me as a weaver and for many people. So everything we designed here could be taken out and use it in another way, because this is all tested in regular testing. So that this works is, it's very difficult. If you're not a textile nerd, you don't understand why this is so special, because we are used to print, digital print. You print it, but this is all interwoven with 8 different yarns, and it's a very complex thing. But it also has to communicate just as what you see, just like, oh, nice thing. And I think it does. It's also, again, a love and hate piece, but let's see how many people will start to love it. I hope it will have a big fan crowd.
It's interesting too to see. I love this shot of the process, because this is the beautiful mess, everything that goes into that object. But it's also fascinating to me how it seems like it pulls forward strands from the Nymphenburg project, from the Polder Sofa, from all of these different avenues of your work, and it shows how they can be tied up together in a new knot. And I love that, the way that it reflects on your own background. So this is our last slide, very appropriately, and I almost feel tired looking at the number of things that you've done as well. But it's a really fantastic body of work, and it shows the possibilities of what can happen in design. So super inspiring to listen to you talk about it. We have just a few minutes. Can we take a couple of questions from the audience? Would that be okay? Okay, we've gotten a couple. One is, let's see, stop share. Okay. One question that we have is, as a designer, do you approach companies that you want to work with ever, or do you wait to be approached?
I wait to be approached.
Mm-hmm. And is that because? Mm-hmm.
That's because I think then they are ready for you. You don't fight the battles within the company. So they spread your bet. You're welcome. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wait till they approach me.
Right, I see. Because you want to make sure that in a way that they want you, rather than fighting for position.
Yeah, I don't want to have a battle if I come in and I need to battle, because I think if I'm not, if my handwriting is not matching, or my concept or my way of working, then why bother? I've got a lot to do, and No, I never ask for.
One simple question, which was just, what was the ceramic company that we were talking about? But it's Royal Tikkelar Makkum, isn't it? That we were talking
Royal Tikkelar Makkum. Yeah.
The 800-year-old incredible ceramic company. We did have an early question that actually came in before the interview, but I thought it was a really good one, which is from somebody called Vanga Tamez. And they ask, I would like to know more about the timing of your process of design. Mm-hmm. I know they may vary from project to project. This person is a ceramics artist. And the process of that can take so much time between design, production, firings. How do you deal with the time scales of each project and negotiating that with the client?
Yeah, it is. That's also part of your industrial mindset. You have to have patience. I always take like a year or 2 years before it is from scratch, or from the question to the end result is most of the time 2 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you often feel rushed by your clients, or always?
No. I often think they are too slow. So.
I love that. Okay. We had a couple of questions about, I know that you get asked this a lot, but we have a couple of questions, so I'm going to pass them along, about sexism in the design world and your role as a pioneering woman designer. Not the only one, obviously, by any means. But I wonder whether you want to say anything about that, about your experiences, and whether gender has been a factor for you.
Yeah. It's always difficult because I don't know what it would be like if I was a man, but of course I know I am the only woman. I know the situation very well because I was raised with three brothers. So I'm very, it's my natural habit to be with only guys. I have a technical background also. I'm also a carpenter. I think for me, I don't know. I don't know. I find it very difficult because I do see there are less women, but for me it was easy. Yeah.
Mm. Okay. It might also be that the Netherlands was a different kind of place than other places at the same time that you were growing up. So, because you mentioned to me, for example, that you were early involved in carpentry in ways that might not have been open to women in some countries. Um, well,
But also, if you can be with the guys, you know, if you feel comfortable with the guys and but stay a woman, yeah, I don't know. Of course, I see there is also all boys network. I also see there is a part of clients that never call me. Like if you look at the Italian companies, they're not so. Yeah, there is of course there are a few women. You know, it also depends on in which culture you are, but yeah, yeah, I find it very difficult because yeah, I find it very difficult to say like what did I find any difficult. I don't know how it would be if I was a man. So
yeah,
that's
yeah, we can only be ourselves, of course. Yeah. This is a kind of fascinating question from Zimra Biner, who's asking you what you think of Donald Judd as a designer. Speaking of guys, there's a real macho guy there. But do you have an opinion on Donald Judd that you want to share by any chance?
very nice artist. Yeah, makes very nice work. Yeah.
Well, I think what Zimmer is particularly asking is, how do you look at the furniture, the design, and his role as a designer, and whether you may perhaps see a connection to what you're doing?
Well, I see him as an artist. So he's coming from another realm. And also, if you talk about industrial products or industrial objects, these are, yeah, objects that come from this is our yeah authors objects, so it's not an industrial, it's another realm,
Mm,
so
yeah.
very beautiful but not in the scope where I work in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. We're almost out of time, so there is actually a question about color, but I'm going to skip that one because that's another talk. We don't have time to talk about that. But I think there are, for those who are interested, I think there are interviews with you about color that are available online. So, and it's of course an incredibly important, rich topic for you. But I'm going to just ask you one last question. It's kind of interesting one to end on, about the concept of failure. So a couple of people have asked about this, including Eleanor Anderson. Can you describe your biggest failure, or rather, how do you define a design failure? And I might add, what do you get from failure that might be useful?
Yeah, I think I make failures every day. Uh, because in the failure is also often a very nice solution. So I also talk to my team always like, also make your failures and also make your ugly things, make the things you shame yourself of, because yeah, for you it is just something that comes out of your hands, but somebody else sees another yarn or another solution. So I'm not afraid of failures. I think this could be brilliant, a failure.
Yeah. Well, and of course, we talked right at the beginning, we started with the idea of imperfection as something to embrace. So perhaps that brings us full circle and say, well, one person's failure is another person's discovery. So we just have to try, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, everyone out there who's listening, please come back on Friday. We have an amazing pair of guests, Billy Etienne and Todd Williams, the great architects here in New York, well known for the Barnes Foundation. Many other projects are going to be joining my co-host, Stephen Burks. So please come back on Friday for Billy and Todd. And I'm afraid that's all the time we have, Hala. It's been so fantastic to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Design and Dialogue. And thanks everyone for joining in.
Thank you.
See you again soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.